Are you trying to figure out what is the best boon in Hades 2, especially in the beginning? Well, here at Middle Age Gaming, we're trying to help you figure it out. This is what I've done in today's video. We're going to look at 5 short clips, roughly about a minute each, showcasing each of the individual boons you're most likely to get at the beginning of the game. Here you go. I've got my first Aphrodite boon that I've sort of spliced into this video. Aphrodite looking very good, the goddess of love in Greece, as you know. I've never enjoyed her boons. Even in Hades 1, I felt like they were not that useful. So we're going to pause the video here for a second. You can see Flutter Strike, your attacks deal more damage to nearby foes, right? So this is your main attack. Pretty cool if you're okay with close range combat, and I struggle with close range combat. So I tend to not choose these kind of abilities. I choose sort of the Y abilities. If you're playing on an Xbox controller, then you've got Rapturing, your cast inflict weak and damage foes while dragging them towards the center. Again, this is the sort of problem I've had with magic. If you watched the first Hades 2 video that I made, I talked about sort of the issues with magic and how I have a hard time using it, just because, as far as I remember, in Hades 1, you didn't really have magic to use. And this one, the third ability, is actually, I find, somewhat useful, especially I'm sort of starting to get used to magic at the moment. So in this particular clip, I think I ended up choosing the melee attack again, because I tend to use my X and my Y attacks more often when it comes to this game. And then I just chose the power-up. A power-up is a great choice when you're actually doing a lot of combat. And here I tend to use more range combat, as I mentioned in previous videos, just because my reflexes are pretty bad and I cannot do a lot of close-up melee combat. But as you can see, the Scorching attack is actually pretty decent in Hades 2. And even the close-up, that 100% damage we got for close-up foes did a lot of damage. And here we are in the second video where we meet Artemis. And in this particular clip, which just came out of nowhere, and we're going to pause again here. And these are the Artemis's abilities. In my playthrough, she was trying to shoot me and I dodged her. And then she was like, okay, as a reward for dodging me and not getting shot with an arrow, here are 3 choices. So again, some of these choices, like similar to the Aphrodite boon, were not great. These choices also, I feel, were not great. After you dash, your magic moves may deal critical damage for 2 seconds. Again, requiring magic, which is something I'm not good at. Vital Science foes with at least 80% health or 80% armor may take critical damage. Good to sort of, get your enemies down, but like when they're down below 79%, that's still a long way to go to sort of defeat them. Like even in the first battle we're defeating, or I should say we're playing against Hecate, the headmistress, right? It takes at least a minute or 2 to kill her, like no matter how many times you've tried, right? And then Death Warrant, a random foe occasionally becomes marked. If it takes critical damage and this repeats, that would work for a critical damage build. So not great for these choices at the moment. And I believe each god has different choices, especially if you get like some gods as your first choice when you first enter the game. Those can be pretty good, but don't forget you could swap out these choices later on. So for example, after you pass the first area, going into the second area, you might have the option to switch to a different ability. So a different like main melee ability and a different ranged ability of a higher tier. Again, that's something you have to decide, is like, is the higher tier more worth it than the current level of my ability? Especially if you've been choosing those sort of power-up options. Artemis, in my opinion, is not great. Someone else can definitely disagree with me. I chose, the 80% less health and 80% less armor as the best choice out of all the options available for those boons. And you can see me sort of experiment right there. And I've always chosen, like when it comes to pass, I've always chosen the extra health, especially because in order for me to sort of get to the final stage, and defeat Hades in the first game, I needed a lot of health and I needed those extra respawn options that you can sometimes get in this game. So again, the first 2 boons, I should say, in this video so far have not been great. I have found some really good boons, and I think this also takes time for me to sort of get used to them as well. This is Hestia, right? The goddess of the hearth, or the fire boon. And you saw me using some fire abilities early on in the game. So these were actually pretty decent. Fire does really good damage because as you keep sort of fire damaging like the bosses, they will continue to take fire damage. Which again, I don't remember this from the first game, but yet here's the main ability, right? Your attacks inflict Scorch. And affects foes take 100 damage accrued from this every 1 second. And that adds up to quite a lot. Like when I was fighting Hestia, I got her down to 25% less health in the first literally 15 seconds of combat just from this Scorch ability. So it is actually pretty good. And in this one, I believe I ended up choosing the long range attack for Y again, because I prefer ranged attacks. And you've already seen me use this, and you can see that right there, right? Like, it does damage to the enemy, not a lot, but then the extra curse damage sort of takes you over the line right there, which is pretty good. And don't forget, right, especially if you've got started to get tools in the game, you need to make sure when you finish a particular area that you mine the resources of that area, where you recharge your magic like it has in that left-hand corner over there, because all of that stuff is going to become much more useful once you get a little further later on into the game. And let's move on to our next boon, which, if I'm mistaken, is the moon boon, now that I think about it. Yes, here we are with the moon, Celine. And let's pause again here. This is an interesting one. Like, again, this focuses on magic, but like, I also find it difficult. Like, I've triggered Lunar Ray, which is actually my favorite choice after I've thought about it a little bit. That does, like it says, 800 damage over 2 seconds is a lot of damage. Like, if you think about the fire boon that we just talked about, that does 100 damage, right, for 1 second. This is 800 damage over 2 seconds. And it's ready after you use 30 magic, which is, again, pretty useful, depending if you're using those like 2 wand things, which I don't remember the official name of it. But yeah, the moon power, definitely pretty cool. Also, again, like so far, I think out of the 4 boons we've looked at, the fire boon is the best so far. I had a good time with the frost boon. Check that out from my first video. I thought that was really cool to be able to stop enemies. But again, in Hades 2, right, this is less like 𝙎𝙪𝙥𝙥𝙦 song where you're fighting an individual enemy. You're fighting usually groups of enemies, and they're like you need AoE attacks for groups of enemies, right? And then you can see me using like this weapon, the basic of the first like ranged weapon you actually get in this game. And I struggled with this weapon so much just because it doesn't do a lot of damage. And while it stuns enemies, right, like the very first base level, but when you get to the shielded enemies or the level 2 enemies, right, it doesn't do so well. And hey, I think I'm going to trigger the ability right here by mistake, right, trying to sort of do stuff. And then you can see it right there, like the Lunar Ray, total by mistake in this actual clip. Totally my fault. And let's move on to the final boon that I think pretty much everyone experiences this, but correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. Zeus, this is just the boon I got today. And it does lightning attack. Again, very familiar from the very first Hades game. Your attack inflicts blitz. Afflicted foes are struck by lightning after they take 120 damage or after 4 seconds, right? So this is pretty cool. And I remember this in the Hades one, this did a lot of damage in the beginning of this game, right? There is no ranged option for lightning that I found. Later on in this particular run, I got an option that allowed me to commit like 30 magic. And every time I struck an enemy, that'd be the chain lightning would go. And that worked out pretty well. So I think if you're just getting started and you're not understanding what boons to take, they've actually done a really good job in Hades 2, whereas some boons might seem kind of terrible, or some abilities might seem kind of bad. But as you go on and you play the game and you get better, you can modify some of these abilities to actually be really cool and suit your individual playstyle. So those are the boons that I've experienced so far. There have been some, but I just want to do 5 this time because we're almost at 10 minutes in this video. And if I did a discussion about all the boons, I was going to do about the path choices as well, this video would have become too long and you guys would have fallen asleep already. But hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to leave a comment or description. You know, what boons do you like in the beginning? What do you suggest for other players? We can all sort of talk about this and get better together and sort of make our way towards the end of Hades 2 and try and finish the game, right? And that's it for me today, guys. Thank you very much. And I will see you in the next video.